The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're gonna love it.
Okay, let's go.
All right, I think I've got our Hannah. You there?
Yeah, I'm right
All
here.
right, fantastic. All right, everybody. Hannah Smith is back, and she is coming to us from Chicago and the DNC. This is actually super cool, and I appreciate you taking time to kind of fill us in. So anyway, everybody, Hannah, as you know, was a DSD guest. Actually, one of my highest rated episodes. I did want to tell you that. I've been meaning to tell you that. So it was really good. People really enjoyed learning about, the Christian nationalism and all that we talk. But anyway, so give us, what's going on over there? What's going on in Chicago?
So much is happening. And my decision to come to Chicago was kind of a last minute decision, but I decided to come because it felt like a very historic DNC to attend events surrounding it. And it has been a very emotional road the past couple of days, I think, for everybody who is standing up for Palestinian rights, both those who are looking to reform the DNC from the inside and those looking to hold it accountable from the outside. So there has been a lot of protests, a lot of vigils, a lot of push from the uncommitted movement to really recognize and pull the topic of this genocide to the center stage of the DNC. And as this kind of democratic pageantry is going on to make sure that this isn't business as usual. And so there has been a lot of energy and a lot of grief simultaneously in the past few days. And I'm really happy to be here and
good.
happy to be with you today.
Democratic pageantry. I love that because honestly, that's really all I see. And I'm using the word democratic to refer to the party, not the concept of democracy. Honestly, I'm not going to lie. What I'm seeing and reading, I just feel like they have completely shrouded this thing. They've thrown a big blanket over it. They've minimized the press coverage. Any press coverage I am seeing, honestly, is really negative. It's like the violent stuff and like turning over things, which we'll talk about that in a second, because honestly, I almost feel like some of that stuff is being staged by Antifa or some entity working for the other side. I'm not even kidding. I really think they create chaos to do that. But like one thing that has been very, I guess, bothersome to me is they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. Like it's been 10 months and they're continuing to send billions of dollars to Israel. How is that doing anything for this cause? How is that doing anything for the movement? What do you think?
Yeah, I think we saw from the Democratic Party and the Democratic Convention a lot of pretending to care, even leading up to the DNC. But then when it actually came time to put their money where their mouth was, seeing them pull back. And it's one thing to not care. Honestly, I would rather someone not care than pretend to care and manipulate us. And even seeing AOC go on stage and say, we're doing everything that we can to have a ceasefire. And that's a complete lie. We know that the Democratic Party is not doing everything they can to secure a ceasefire. And so to see the way that the uncommitted movement was denied the ability to speak on the main stage. They did have a panel, which was super important and historic and honestly a beautiful thing to have happen and a step in the right direction. But they were denied the ability to speak on the main stage. And they're still staging a sit-in right now outside of the DNC. I think it's still happening right now. And that, it shows the manipulation that is going on to try to say, oh yeah, we do care, we're working towards this, when that's not what they're saying with their actions. And it really shows that when it comes to Palestinian rights, there's a huge double standard within the Democratic Party, because to say that you care about human rights, to say that you care about freedom, while in the city that has the largest representation of Palestinian Americans in America, denying the ability for a Palestinian to speak on a genocide that's going on right now is horrific and it's disappointing, but unfortunately it's not surprising.
Yeah, yeah. I was very surprised that they would bring on stage the mom of one of the hostages. I forget her name, Rachel Grossman, maybe. And again, here's the thing. Here's my take on that. I absolutely would love to hear from the mom of the hostage, but I'd also love to hear from some Palestinian person who's lost 50 members of their family and, has suffered in their right too. So I think it is a total double standard that they did not do that. It really shows me the 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 meandering that they're trying to do with this. And you said something before we hit record. I think it was like mass manipulation. What was the term you used? Was that the
Yeah,
term?
it's mass manipulation.
Mass manipulation. I love that. And you asked me, you said, "Hey, why do you even do this? Like, why do you do your podcast? Why do you do all this?" And it's because mass manipulation pisses me off. It really makes me mad to think that there are groups of individuals who think they can pull one over on us,
Mhm.
and honestly, I feel like that's what's taking place right now on the Democratic side with this situation. On the Republican side with this situation, yeah, I'm not a fan of the way Trump talks about things, but at least you know where you stand a little bit with
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to caveat that Trump statement by saying I think Trump says what he needs to say in those regards because he wants to secure that $100 million from Miriam Adelson, and he wants to play to his evangelical Christian base who support Israel because if they don't, the second coming of Jesus is not going to happen. I don't think Trump, personally, I don't think he really not only cares that much, but I also don't think he is as bad about it if he wins. I think right now he's literally just doing and saying whatever he needs to do and say to whichever group in order to get the money and get the support. But on the Democrat side, I really do think they're manipulating the masses. I think it's talking the talk and there's no walk. They're not walking any of the walk. Let me ask you about Jill Stein.
Mhm.
And just for everyone's knowledge, I mean, a lot of people still don't even really know who Jill Stein is, but she is running for president on the Green Party ticket and honestly has gained a decent amount of notoriety. And she's really, in my opinion, a one issue person so far. She's all about Palestine. She's Jewish. So it's interesting that she's able to leverage sort of that skin in the game. But so you talk to her a little bit, give us that interaction, and then I'd love your overall thoughts on her.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to quickly say with Trump, I'm not fully aligned with you on that.
Okay.
I'd be curious to see how he would proceed. But given his history with the Arab American and Palestinian American community and the bans from certain countries, and then also moving the embassy to Jerusalem, which was obviously to appeal to the evangelical Christian Zionist movement. But I still wouldn't have faith that he would change when he's not looking to get reelected in his legacy years. I don't have a lot of confidence in anyone right now, which brings me to Jill Stein. So let's talk.
That was such a perfect segue.
It's, we always want a savior, and it's understandable. Like, we want somebody that's going to represent us and that's going to turn this country around. And it's, there's no president that is really going to save us. And I feel this kind of at the core of me. I always think about the concept of the philosopher king in Plato, and that one of the characteristics of the philosopher king, which would be this sort of virtuous, well-grounded person that wants to serve for the sake of humanity. One of the characteristics of the philosopher king is that they don't want to be the philosopher king. And I think that is a huge problem in politics. And it's part of why I just don't think that there's any presidential candidate who will save us. I think it has to come from the people, because we have to be able to move on from the mass manipulation so that we can push our leaders to do the right thing, not because we're begging them, but because they have no other choice. And so I think that the power really lies in the people. So I had a very brief interaction with Jill Stein. One of her right-hand men spotted me from like 40 feet away and said, "I know you from Instagram." And I was trying to during some of these protests, I really wanted to be a fly on the wall and just kind of like talk to regular folks, talk to grassroots organizers, get a feel for how people are feeling, what's the energy. And so I kind of like, I had a hat and sunglasses on. I kind of wanted to be like a little bit sneaky. He spotted me. So I went over and, I thanked her for her support of the movement. But really, like, I'm not going to go off of vibes. I'm going to go off of facts. But I did feel I didn't feel the energy that I was hoping to feel in me. And that's okay. And obviously, like, it's protests can be exhausting. It's a lot of energy. And at the end of the day, this was like at 6 p.m. It's okay to feel.
By the way, are there thousands of people out there? How many people are there for this? Is it like legit huge or not really?
So it wasn't as large as I was hoping it would be, but it was between 15 and 20,000 people, which I think is great. Jill Stein was a part of a smaller kind of faction of the protests. I didn't see her at the main one, but then I saw her marching down the street in kind of the north side of Chicago, or I don't even know if it's the north side. I don't know Chicago very well, but there were a lot of people. There was a high turnout. A lot of 200 different organizations were a part of the planning of March on the DNC. So it was definitely a significant movement. So with Jill Stein, do I trust her? I know that there's a large movement within the Palestinian American community that is pushing for Jill Stein, and that is completely understandable because I think it would feel, even for me, very sickening. And I honestly, I'm not going to endorse any candidate. It would feel very sickening for me to vote for somebody who has the power to stop this genocide but is not. So the idea of not voting for Kamala Harris is very understandable to me. Jill Stein is somebody that a lot of people are now pushing for because she represents the ability to break the two-party system. And I think the two-party system does need to break. She represents the Green Party, so she's very pro-Palestine, and then she's also very pro like environmental changes and regulations, which I think all of that is great. I have a lot of suspicions about her co-opting this cause for her own gain. And whether she is genuine about Palestine or not is not something that I can judge. But I have concerns that this is just an effort to say, okay, now is the time to break the two-party system. Let's have let's vote green. Let's show to the Democratic Party that we're not going to support a party that supports genocide, which is understandable. But really, she hasn't posted, like, she's not very active in between elections and election cycles. And so her speaking out for human rights and things hasn't been that consistent because it seems like every election cycle she runs and things go on. There was an investigation into some of the ads promoting her and things, and there was Russian money in 2016 that went to supporting her. That does not mean that she's a Russian asset. That does not mean that she had any say in that support. It's something to be cautious about. And then the other thing was she had a history and tried to kind of cover this up of supporting Bashar al-Assad. And let me tell you something that I just cannot get out of my head. In 2017, I was living in Lebanon, and I went and I would go to Tripoli in North Lebanon quite a bit. And I spoke to a woman who was 8 months pregnant when she faced chemical weapons at the hands of Bashar al-Assad. And her child had a birth defect that was on the spine and was preventing him from being able to walk at a certain point. Right. And after seeing that, to see someone support, and it's one thing to say, we need stability in the region, we need stability in Syria and all that, but to see someone use chemical weapons on their own people and to still support that is sickening to me as well.
Yeah.
And so I understand the movement to support her, but I think we also have to approach that with a level of criticism and just nuance as well. I know we were talking for this, like nuance is so needed in all of these conversations. And I think often we're like prevented with false binaries that don't really exist. There's a lot of space to have nuance here of how to create change and how to create change on the U.S. side of this movement for a ceasefire and for Palestine.
No, I totally agree. I mean, my thing with Jill Stein is you're not running for president of Gaza. You're running for president of the United States. And I've seen nothing from her talking any other type of policy besides Palestine. And so I feel like her and her team said, hey, you know what? This is our one issue. A lot of times with elections, it does come down to one issue voting. People will pick one issue, whether it's abortion, immigration, or whatever. They're like, okay, we're going to make this our one issue, and we're going to own this on behalf of the Palestinians, and that's going to be our flag. So I'm a little bit skeptical there. Speaking of other candidates, is there any talk of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in that group? Because I think that dude's a big time Zionist supporter, which is weird because of all the interesting things that are coming out about the death of his dad and uncle at the hands of the Mossad. And when I say all, there's a ton of that. And then also the USS Liberty bombing that took place. So it did not seem his dad and uncle had a very good relationship with Israel, but he seems to be bought and paid for. What are your thoughts?
I don't really I don't think it's consistent, as you said. I don't really understand his support for Israel. I have a Palestinian friend who met him and really felt like he was not going to change on this issue. And so whether he's bought and paid for, I am not sure. Whether he just hasn't understood the issue at the depth that is necessary, I'm still not very sure. But he seems like a guy that really wants to get to the truth and really wants to share the truth. I feel like that is a core piece of his campaign strategy. And then to simultaneously support Israel does not make a lot of sense to me. So I don't understand it. I don't know why, but
no, that's exactly, you just nailed it, and that applies to Jill Stein and him. Here are two people that are trying to show us the truth, show us that the two-party system is broken, and then yet with Jill Stein, she's not showing us anything else. And then with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's not showing us the truth on what many are thinking is the most important issue right now. So then it makes you doubt everything about him. And then you're like, holy shit, they're just playing us. They're playing us with their identity politics, and they're playing us in the direction that they're wanting to take. I think he's going to drop out and replace Trump, or I'm sorry, support Trump. I think he's going to jump on that bandwagon. And then I think the quid pro quo will be Trump will make him head of the FDA or give him some type of big job or something along those lines. Okay, you know what I wanted to ask you, because I don't totally understand this, and tell me if you do. The concept of this uncommitted voters, we're hearing a lot about that, but I don't know if everybody truly understands, what that technically means and what that looks like. You have perspective on that?
Yes. So I chatted with two of the co-founders and delegates on Sunday and was really inspired and moved by their message and their goals. So the uncommitted movement started in Michigan. It was a very last-minute organizing strategy, and they actually secured 13% of the Democratic voters in Michigan to vote uncommitted. So voting uncommitted was a message to send to Biden to say, we are not going to support you in the midst of this genocide. And so it started there, and this was during the Democratic primary in February. And then it moved into a nationwide movement. So there's over 740,000 voters who have voted uncommitted to support these 30 delegates who are now at the DNC. And this group they are Democrats. They are progressive Democrats. They are a lot of Palestinian American and Arab Americans who want to see this country actually represent its people. And the majority of Democrats support a ceasefire. The majority of Democrats support limitations on this funneling of arms into Israel unconditionally. And we're not seeing that it represented by the party. And so the uncommitted movement aimed to do that. And so they voted uncommitted. And then when there was a roll call on a kind of a Zoom that the Democratic Party had after Biden stepped down, they nominated, rather than nominating Harris, they nominated children who were in Gaza. And so, So what they're doing is very powerful. Also, what they're doing is trying to reform the Democratic Party from the inside. And so they have faced criticism. And when I posted a video with some of the clips from the interview that I did with them on Monday, I got a lot of comments from people saying, this is worthless, this is unnecessary, all of that. One thing I will say is I think that it's important to apply pressure in every single way that we can. And it's important to make this issue not just a leftist issue, not just even a Democrat issue, but this is a human issue. And so the more that we can get this genocide, the more that we can get Palestinian rights to take the center stage in these types of environments, I think that's beneficial. And so there were uncommitted delegates who also unfurled an arms embargo banner at the DNC. There were uncommitted delegates who just held a press conference this morning about the fact that they were denied the ability to take the stage. And they had multiple different options for speakers to speak on the main stage. They had already sent in the script for the speech. It had been, they had every reason to be able to speak, but were not given that. And so the uncommitted movement, I think what they're doing is it's really good strategy in a way to try to reform the party from the inside, even if it doesn't work, because it is bringing this issue into the mainstream. And because it is showing, hey, if we're going to break the two-party system, we need to do everything that we can to reform it in the first place. And so that's what the uncommitted movement is all about. Highly recommend that people check them out, not only because what they're doing is important, but because I think it's really good campaign strategy. They've gotten a ton of press.
Yeah.
Their ask is very simple, which is just an arms embargo. Their campaign slogan right now is not another bomb, which is something that a lot of people can get on board with, which is important when you need the majority of people to say, okay, no, I can get behind that, to keep it simple, to keep it clear. They're not a part of the protest outside of the DNC, but they're harnessing that energy to give VP Harris and the Democratic Party a chance to redeem themselves, a chance to say, hey, in these swing states, if we want to win in these swing states, we have to do the right thing and we have to stand up for Palestinian rights. So
Yeah.
I
Okay.
admire them a lot.
Okay, I'll have to, the whole electoral college and all of that process, it's just so funny. I guarantee you most of Americans, including myself, don't even understand any of that. So that's something I'll have to dig into. Maybe we'll have to do another episode together and dig into that. I think the opportunity for the Democratic Party to redeem themselves was a failure, because the only way, in my opinion, to redeem yourself, they should have let somebody take the stage. They should have let somebody take the stage, but they didn't. And again, that to me, that's the walking the walk, and they didn't walk it. So it'll be interesting to see what plays out. It's a mess. The whole thing really is such a mess. What else did I want to ask you? Well, what else over there? Is there anything else on that you're seeing with the people? Like how's people's energy? Do people feel just like defeated, or are they energetic? I mean, what are people feeling?
There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of disappointment. I think across the board, there's a lot of grief. I know that there was a protest outside of the Israeli embassy that I didn't go to on Tuesday because I went to a vigil, and that was a lot of energy. That was a lot of anger, and understandable anger. And then the protest that I went to on Monday, which was the March on the DNC protest, also, I think that a lot of people want a path of hope, a political path of hope, and we're not seeing it very clearly. And one of my fears in all of this, I had a conversation with a friend last February who has a pretty good inside scoop into what to expect from intelligence agencies and governments when it comes to the American side of the ceasefire and pro-Palestine movement. And he said, expect efforts to fracture the movement, to try to separate Palestinian Americans and Arab Americans from other groups so that the movement loses its legs, so that the movement loses its efficacy. And I think that split between who to vote for right now is being capitalized by intelligence agencies and people who want this movement to fail. And so I think in what I witnessed on Monday was a lot of energy, a lot of hope, not a lot of hope, a lot of energy, a lot of desire for change, a lot of desire to do everything that we can for change, but really a split between the people who feel like we should vote for a step in a better direction than Trump in their mind, or vote third party. And I think And then in the online discourse surrounding all of that, I saw a lot of bots. I've seen an uptick in bots, and I've
Yeah,
seen an
bots are
uptick
crazy.
in trying to inflame and exacerbate tensions. I think we should be talking about who to vote for. I think that's like a very natural topic that is dividing us in certain ways, and we should be talking about it. But I think that that is being manipulated right now. We have to be very cautious about that as a movement, because come November, I want to make sure that we are still fighting for Palestinian liberation, collective liberation, regardless of who we're voting for, that we're working to end this genocide, and that we're not losing faith in the movement. We're not being disappointed in it because of the position of its leaders. This movement is not about leaders. It's not about content creators. This is about real human beings in Palestine, children who deserve life and freedom.
No,
So,
exactly. And it's about real human beings. I mean, over the past few days, there have been a few videos. I'm sure you've seen them, and I force myself to look at them, even though I don't want to. And for those of you listening, I'm sure you probably haven't looked at them, and maybe you shouldn't, but I'm going to explain it a little. I mean, there's videos of children with half of their head ripped off wide open, and like these Israeli bombs that continue to fall while all this is taking place. They're continuing to bomb refugee facilities. They're continuing to bomb hospitals, and under the guise of the IDF says intelligence showed, Hamas militants there. And then we never see any Hamas militants. All we see are dead children. It's insane. It's insane. I can't even. Sometimes it's hard to put to words what's really taking place. And unfortunately, unless you're following it or affected by it, it's just like people on social media scrolling. It's like this genocide has turned into scrolling memes for a lot of people. And it's ridiculously sad. It's ridiculously sad. Okay, let's see. Anything else? Because I know you're hectic today.
I think I just want to add that this movement is not always what it's presented as by the media. I think the media tries to paint this as fringe or as hyper leftist or something like that. And I just want to say, like, maybe you see some stuff in the media about protests being violent or disruptive or things like that. That happens in every single movement. And whether those are people from within the movement or people from outside looking to exacerbate things, that's what the media likes to cover, because that's what people are going to click on. That's what people are going to read. And a certain level of disruption is necessary. Don't get me wrong. But I just want people to know that this movement is a lot of everyday Americans who believe that their tax dollars shouldn't go to genocide. A lot of the people that I met out there, and the 20,000 people who showed up to the protest on Monday, were regular people who just want change. They just feel like this money should be going to our own people and our own country and our own issues, and not to the murder of children. And so I just want to emphasize that. I want to emphasize that this is the majority of the U.S. supports a ceasefire. The majority of the U.S. supports an end to the unconditional support for Israel. And so I want to add that, because sometimes when you look at the coverage, that point doesn't come across. But I think it's an important one.
No, it absolutely is. And, you've got voices like Candace Owens and, as crazy as it sounds, Dan Bilzerian, that dude. Like, they're bringing this stuff to the forefront, and they're fundamentally saying, hey, at the end of the day, stop killing children, stop killing women, stop killing people, stop sending, money and bombs without a plan. So I totally agree with you on that. The last thing I wanted to add was that as of this morning, I went and checked again this morning, literally on the Harris Walls website or the Trump Vance website or Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s website or Jill Stein's website. None of them have what their plan is and what their policy stances are. All they have is donation, donation, donation. And so that right there is insane. If you think about it, the four big entities that are in the mix right now, none of them are coming forward and saying, here's our plan for Gaza. Here's our plan for Ukraine. Here's our plan for immigration. Here's our plan for U.S. energy. Here's our plan for inflation. Here's our plan for housing and the mortgage rate. Nobody is talking about policy and issues. That's
Mm,
sad. That's sad.
that
That's
is-
what I want people to wake up for. And when we talked earlier about why do I do this? I do this to force that message onto people and say, hey, start asking those questions. Who cares about all the bickering and the back and forth?
Yeah,
Anyway, all right, we're gonna let you go, Hannah. You're amazing. We're gonna do more together. Hang on the line, and we will talk to you soon.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Ray.
This episode was brought to you by the new book Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.